So the idea of time is also central to Mohanty's arguments, and Mohanty argues that the Western woman is often presented as being advanced in comparison to the person or the woman in the global South, or what is termed the third world woman. And so time is really central to this narrative that um, English is imagined to be a more progressive language, or an advanced language, and capitalism is imagined to be advanced in the supposed first world, and the third world woman then exists in another time. So this idea of backward and forward, traditional and modern, these binaries really structure this narrative, and many writings about women in the third world, or the third world woman. And so Mohanty cites Valerie Amos and Pratibha Parmar. And Mohanty writes, in the context of Western women writing slash studying women in the third world, such objectification, however benevolently motivated, needs to be both named and challenged. As Valerie Amos and Pratibha Parmar argue quite eloquently, quote, feminist theories which examine our cultural practices as feudal residues or label us traditional also portray us as politically immature women who need to be versed and schooled in the ethos of Western feminism. They need to be continually challenged. And so, this kind of idea that women in the global south or third world women do not protest on their own behalf, don't organize, don't speak on their own behalf, is obviously untrue. And one can see with the internet that there are ongoing social movements and political movements, protests against the poor treatment of women in countries like India and Iran, and throughout the global south. Uh, this idea of someone who does not have agency and is a victim lends itself to a politics of missionary care and concern, where the Western spectator is invited to intervene in and save the other. This idea of saving is something that post colonial theorists are obviously really critical of, because it implies that one needs to be saved. And it also reproduces this kind of colonial hierarchy, where uh, one where the person from the West has the power to name and is seen to be more progressive, or seen to be further ahead, or imagined to be further ahead. And this kind of backwards and forwards does not allow for one to understand the nuanced ways that people live their lives and try to resist what they term to be oppression. Finally, I think what is interesting to think about is the lack of specificity. Sorry, I'm just adjusting uh, my notes. That in many of these cases, or many of these writings, what Mohanty argues is that the third world woman um, becomes a kind of racial category uh, that is not given any agency, and also not given any specificity. So the history of, say, casteism and caste-based discrimination in India is very different than the history of other forms of class antagonism and modes of racialization in other countries in the global south. So when the third world woman or the global south becomes racialized, categories collapse into one another. There is no specificity. And this is something that Mohanty argues is a form of imperialism and a form of systemic racism, that just constructing these categories of the third world woman as being one who always must labor and suffer is obviously a really tactical um, effort to see oneself or to construct the West as being superior.